My name is Adolfo Brandes. I work for Hustexo. We're an OpenStack / OpenEdX house now. And this is life as a new OpenEdX contributor. By the way, this talk is also hosted on the web, so if you want to take a look at the slides later, this is where it's at. All right? Okay, so what is this about? If you were here for my last talk, last year actually, or actually, what, 8 months ago, I discussed a little OpenStack project we went about developing, which was an X block that actually fires up a student environment on demand on OpenStack. Okay, and that worked. That worked relatively well. But we had a little something we wanted to do, which is we wanted, because this is for lab environment, so the student is developing his stuff on a course. We didn't want the student to be able to take a lab unless he finished the previous one, right? It sort of makes sense, right? You can't run commands if you haven't first installed the package that provides those commands, okay? So we went about and looked for X blocks or anything on OpenEdX that did this, right? It sounded like something that OpenEdX would provide. And it turned out, yes, there was something called the conditional X module, and that's what we wanted to use for this. So put simply, if you get to a second lab, if you haven't finished the first one successfully, you just don't see the lab instructions, right? And this is something that the conditional X module was supposed to do, but it didn't, all right? So this is why I asked if there are any musicians in the audience. Does anybody know what this is? What is it? That's a glissando, yeah, good one. That's actually the sad trombone sound, okay? So can anybody enunciate it for me? How do you go about it? Oh, thank you, yeah. So I'm gonna call on you for help next time, okay? So the conditional X module doesn't work if your X block has custom JavaScript, okay? So yay, we found it. Too bad it doesn't work for what we wanna do, okay? So, of course, this is open source, right? We can just take the code and fix it. Awesome. So this is what we set about doing. You should know a little bit about OpenEdX. How many of you are actual developers here? Okay, and a nice fraction. But this is gonna be a light talk, so don't worry about it, okay? You should also have a sense of humor. If you don't, you should probably just walk out now, because it's gonna be hard for you. Okay, so first off, why contribute at all? I'm gonna take a little detour here to talk about this because in essence, this is one of the most important things about any community. And once again, this is from the horse's mouth, meaning I'm the horse here, not in the sense that I'm an authority or anything. It's just that I went about actually trying to contribute something as a new or an outside contributor to OpenEdX, okay? All right. This is not a stock photo. This is my sort of nephew. He's the son of one of my best friends, okay? And you know the warm feeling you're getting from looking at a cute baby, if you have a heart, that is. This is what a developer feels like when you get a patch that works and you learn the code and it runs and it's beautiful, right? This is how you feel about your code. So keep this in mind when I move along here. Okay, now an interesting tidbit. When I asked permission to use this picture, I told the mother of the baby, right? I'm gonna use it in such and such a manner, and I wanted her to give me permission, so I said, he's much prettier than all the stock photos out there, okay? And she said, well, of course, he's more beautiful than all the photos out there. And once again, this sort of proves the point. If you have a patch or something that you put out into the world that's so beautiful, you want the world to see it, okay? So if you create a patch for an open source project, you want to see it out there, okay? Simply because you think it's beautiful. There's a very practical reason for contributing a patch, but there's also a misconception that goes with it. So the idea is that if you contribute a patch upstream, you no longer have to maintain it, okay? But that's not really how it happens. You put it up there, right? But you're still responsible for it, much like a baby, okay? If you don't take care of it, it may die. And this happened to me before as well. I once contributed something to, what was it, the Myth TV project. And after a while, my feature that I actually depended on disappeared, okay? The reason being, I didn't take care of the patch, okay? So contributing a patch is important, but you don't just throw it over the fence, right? You have to take care of it. Okay, so the practical reason for contributing something upstream is simply that it's a pain in the butt to maintain a fork of your own, okay? If you're a new contributor, one of the first things you have to do is put your name in the authors file. Okay, how many of you have done this yet? Okay, 1, 2, all right, not a lot, that's fine. And you put it at the end of the file, right? Now, if you're maintaining or you're hopeful to get your patch upstream, you put your name at the end of the file, and if somebody gets a patch in before you, what happens? Their name is at the end of the file, and then what does Git do? It's a Git conflict, right? And what do you do with a Git conflict? You have to fix it, okay, manually, all the time. So this actually happened to me in this patch I'm discussing here a couple of times, right? Because one of the things you have to do when you submit a patch and it sits there in the pull request, if the patch can't be merged or for a reason of a conflict, for example, you get a lot of red lines or red check marks and stuff. So you want to rebase your stuff often. So, and this applies to the authors file, but also to anything else. So you don't want to have to need to do this all the time, okay? To rebase, git fix, etc. How many of you actually maintain a fork of OpenEdX in-house? 1, 2, 3. That's it? 3? All right, I expected more. I've done this for a living, not to OpenEdX. For about, I don't know, 10 years, I worked for a company where we maintained a fork of a large open source project. And I was in charge of rebasing from time to time. So essentially, I was traumatized there for a while, right? So I'm a very big advocate of contributing just for the sake of not having to maintain a fork. Another reason is strength in numbers. We're all part of a community here. How many of you here work for OpenEdX? How many of you have a pink dot on your name tags? All right, less than half, okay. So the other half of you, you're in the community, so to speak, right? Of course, edX itself and you guys that work for edX, you're also in the community, but I'm gonna say outsiders in the sense that, well, we're not insiders. If you build a strong community, and you do that by submitting contributions, not just by talking, coming to conferences, then everything becomes easier for you as a member of the community. Okay, so strength in numbers. And I'm gonna talk about this in more detail a few slides down the road. The important bit here, for me, is if you don't contribute anything, you can't complain about anything. And I've seen this happen in Slack on an OpenEdX channel where, this happens all the time. If you maintain an open source project, you hear this all the time. People complain, right? And one of the edX developers said something like, after a long complaint about somebody that was kind of clueless, they said, well, see what we have to put up with? We give them software for free, and we still have to listen to complaints, right? It's a genuine human feeling. It's a fair thing to say even. But it's also very human to want to complain, whether you paid for something or not, right? If you want the right to complain, you have to contribute something, okay? Otherwise, it's just not fair. Okay, back to edX itself and my little story here. I'm not going to spend too much time on how the edX code base works because other people, more knowledgeable people than I, have done it before in the conference, and there are going to even be tutorials about it, if I'm not mistaken, tomorrow and Friday. However, way back in the beginning, when we were considering using edX for or OpenEdX for our platform, we wanted to know if the edX project is healthy, if there's a community around it. Is it a welcoming community? Can you submit patches? Are they going to be accepted? And we read mailing list posts, and we went on GitHub, saw statistics. You know, it is an active project. There are 250 contributors just last year. Anyway, it looked fine, but you know, the Linux kernel also looks fine when you're looking at those statistics alone. I found this on linuxcounter.net. Somebody went through the trouble of writing a script that counts how many bad words are in the source code of the Linux kernel. Now, it's 17 million lines of code, and I guess this runs on every version. And let's see here. You know, I blurred them out just so as to not offend anybody. But the black one is the F word, right? The green one is, well, crap. Crap's not really bad, but still. And there are about 350 bad words in the Linux kernel, okay? All in all. Now, that's 17 million lines of code, right? And 350 bad words. That gives about one bad word in 50,000, something like that, okay? And we all know the Linux community. It's easygoing to contribute a patch, right? Everybody's welcoming. You hear lutes playing in the distance when you contribute a patch. Everybody's happy. Nobody criticizes you, right? Of course not, right? The Linux kernel community is a tough one. You need to develop sort of a hard shell around you to become a kernel contributor, okay? It's kind of scary. And it dawned on me, okay, so maybe I have a metric here, right? One bad word in 50,000 lines of code. Let's see how edX fares, right? There are roughly 600,000 lines of code. How many bad words do you think I found? Let's hear some guesses here. 0. 2,000. Whoa. Ned, what do you think?
I'm going to guess 35.
35. Okay, cool. There's one bad word. Just one.
Are you going to show it to us?
Well, what is it? Show of hands for the F word. This crap. All right. The S word. A-hole, maybe? No? All right. It's the actual sentence is, holy crap, the server broke. And it's not even in this is a test. Right? I see Ned grappling for that right now. He actually is. See? And he's running git blame to see who it was. Right? I'm not going to point any fingers. But if this is any indication, so this is one bad word in 600,000. That's 10 times less than the Linux kernel, okay? So if I'm right, then the OpenEdX community is much more welcoming than the Linux kernel one, all right? Unfortunately, Correlation does not imply causation, right? It's just an interesting little fact. What I'm going to go into now is how exactly that went for me, okay? So back to my beautiful patch. Oh, it's so lovely. It actually looks something more like this, right? This is this is a QR code for the to a URL of the first version of my pull request, okay? And it was 90 lines of code long. That's 90 lines. It's not a one-liner. It's not a bug fix. It's a new feature, okay? I made the conditional X module actually import JavaScript and display it on screen. I'm a genius. Yeah, they're going to love me at the conference, right? I'm going to be their hero. Except, of course, I then issued the pull request and reality set in. Okay, so just to give a little bit of the mechanics here, issuing a pull request for those of you that haven't is pretty easy. You push your code to a GitHub repository, a fork of the actual edX repository, which is also a push of a button, and then you push another button to issue the pull request, okay? And once you do that, the edX developers are notified somehow of that, right? Ned knows about it when you click that button, hopefully. He says yes. Then there's a little bureaucracy. Essentially, you don't give up your rights, as in many projects, but if you read the edX contributor agreement, you sort of become co-owner of that code with edX, okay? The edX, the organization. So you sign a little document and you tell the world that, okay, whatever I contribute, and I think even everything I contributed in the past and in the future, becomes co-owned by edX itself, okay? This is fine, especially since edX is released under AGPL v3, for those familiar with that, okay? This means that it's as open source as you can get. It's not even open source, it's free software in installment terms, okay? Which is a lot more serious, so to speak. But that's, that's a whole different talk. One thing I noticed immediately was my PR got tagged with open source contribution. In Git you can tag stuff, and there was this little blue tag, open source contribution. Now that got me thinking. Okay, so they're kind of new at building a community, and this is fine. This may mean two things. One, that, ooh, an open source contribution, yay, fanfare, let's review it, let's help this guy. Or it can mean, this is an open source contribution. We'll look at it later. Whatever the case, it's not something you usually see on big open source communities, okay? I don't want to, speak too badly of this. It's not that important, but it's an indicator that there's a difference. Okay, there's a difference between being an outside contributor and having a pink dot on your name tag. You see what I'm saying? I'm from outside and I'm contributing. Okay, that's fine. Let's see what this means. The next thing you see when you issue a pull request are the automated tests running. Okay. And you actually get a real-time thing going, and it's like, it runs, 7, 8 different suits of tests, and some of them take a while, and you're there, let's see how this goes. And of course, on my first run, I got, well, this is actually my last run. On my first one, I had like 5 red check marks. On my beautiful baby, no way. They don't know what they're talking about. And then reason set in, and I thought, oh, I know what this is. This is edX master failing tests, not me. It's not my fault. So I went and ran the tests on master to see if that was indeed the case. And of course, wah, 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 all greens for master. So yeah, it was my fault. My baby wasn't as beautiful as I thought. Okay, cool. Back to the drawing board of coffee and cabbage. you all know what JavaScript is? Probably, right? Heard of it, you know. It's something that runs in the browser. But at a certain point on edX development, they started to use CoffeeScript, which is essentially, well, it's a language that gets compiled into JavaScript, but it's supposedly simpler and fixes some of the issues or disadvantages of the language. And I went ahead and used that a lot. You know, there are many tests written using CoffeeScript and so on. But then I got to talking with folks, and I think it was Andy Rubin. Is he at the conference, by the way? No? He's one of the developers. He wasn't. He helped me with the. I don't know. I think it's Rubin. Anyway, some guy. He was really nice, by the way, whoever he is. He said, "Yeah, well, we're not using CoffeeScript anymore, so everything that's new shouldn't use CoffeeScript." Okay, so back to the drawing board, doing away with CoffeeScript. And then there's the bok choy tests, the acceptance tests. Bok choy is a Chinese cabbage, which is why this is in the slide. And those are interesting, right? A single suit, I think, takes 10 minutes to run on my old machine here. So anyway, this was an endeavor. This is what I want to say here. I had a teacher in high school. His name was Mr. McFarland. And whenever you turned in an essay, he was a history teacher. He was a baby boomer, right? He wasn't an actual hippie, but you know, he was in the 60s in college. And whenever I turned in an essay, he told me to go back and rewrite it, okay? Just for the heck of it. And I used to ask why. Why? You know, it's here, I'm done. I've put in all this effort. Why aren't you even gonna grade it? Because it builds character, man. And indeed, I went through several iterations of this and discussions with him. And it prepared me for a life in open source contribution. Who'd have thunk? A history teacher, you know, it was one of the most valuable lessons he gave me. Why? Because here I am contributing to OpenEdX, and I have this patch upstream. Actually, it's not upstream yet. It's a PR. And I'm talking to Andy Armstrong or Rubin, whoever he is. And he's like, oh, OK, so this looks good. You're failing some tests. That's fine. You can fix those. But don't you think it would be a great idea if you take this code you're writing here, and instead of applying it just to the LMS, make it general. Put it in the common library so the CMS and the LMS can use it. All right? So, all right, cool. That sounds harmless enough, especially in the way he said it. It was like a single sentence. Yeah, just, no, go ahead and do that. It's fine. Then we'll accept it, or something of the sort. Of course, actually doing that ended up being a shopping list of gargantuan proportions, okay? Because, you know, I can go on and on here. There's something called require.js, which the CMS uses, but the LMS only uses partially. And the code I was writing, that particular part I was writing my code on, can't use it or hasn't been prepared to use it. Okay, so actually doing this, long story short, my patch was now at 600 lines of code. Okay, from 90 to 600, you know, just from a single phrase in a PR comment. All right. You know, I was still feeling pretty good about myself. As you've seen, it only fails 2 tests now, right? As opposed to 5 or 6, whatever it was. The question is, of course, did I get it in the end, right? Not yet. But I haven't given up, all right? You should never give up when you're contributing something, because it is hard being a first-time contributor. It's not easy for anybody, even if you're a master programmer. If you come to a new project, it doesn't matter if you can speak the language, you have to learn the framework, right? So I've learned a lot by writing those 600 lines in response to to interacting with the community, right? There is, though, the point of what I could have done better. Okay, why isn't it upstream? So I was thinking of writing this talk. What should I tell these people? Okay. Oh well. I'll do it by. You just have to believe me. Okay. So, I actually disappeared from the pull request for about a month or two, which is something you should never do, and I should have known better. Okay. The edX guys were really nice about it. They even went to the trouble of pinging me. So, hey, are you there yet? Still? Are you going to finish this? In other words. And I was like, yeah, hey, sorry, I got busy with other stuff. All right? But remember, this is your baby. It's your patch. You can't just do that. Once you submit it, you have to take care of it. If you want it to get upstream, I mean. So this is something I did that wasn't, wasn't very good. So if you're doing this, don't give up on it until at least it's accepted, okay? And then don't forget about it in the future. But nowadays with unit tests and stuff, it's easier to protect your patch so it doesn't get deleted accidentally, okay? So there's a reason for tests. What I really liked about contributing was these guys. They helped a lot. So they're serious. OpenEdX is serious, as Joel said, about creating a community, and it shows. Okay, so you shouldn't be discouraged by what I said here. You're actually going to be helped. They were very, the edX folks were very responsive to everything I needed. It was me that disappeared, not them. Okay, so this is saying a lot about the project. They're serious about it. However, there are a couple of things I'd like to see. How am I doing on time? 25 more? Or is it 25? Okay, anyway. I would like, okay, so remember, you were all here for John O'Bacon's keynote, right? Or most of you, I hope. And he said something that rang true with me, which is, don't give new developers impossible tasks that they can never finish, right? It wasn't a big point in his keynote, but it was something he said. And it's not that the edX folks gave me an impossible task. I love a challenge, right? But when you're building a community, you have to be careful not to let this happen, not to let people get discouraged, all right? And as I said, I was helped by them, but at a certain point I got this sentence that, sort of carelessly led me down a really, really deep rabbit hole. Okay, so if maybe the tag on GitHub shouldn't be open source contribution, but it should be new contributor. Okay, so people can sort of be a little bit more careful. Okay, so let's help this guy out to begin with, and then we'll, and then we'll be harsh on him later when he becomes an actual contributor. Garrett. Okay, I have 10 minutes, awesome. I've worked with OpenStack for a while now, and they have something called Garrett, and it's a code review system, right? I think it was built by Google, am I wrong? So keep me honest. Yeah, okay. And what it does is, it gives you a history of how a particular contribution or patch is doing, all right? So you have a history of how many times has this patch been rejected, which is very useful, all right? I was lucky enough for this talk to have kept a record of my rebasing attempts, right? But if you're not, you end up losing how your patch looked like in the beginning, okay? So Garrett helps with that a lot. There's a history. There's also a voting system, which is nice. So you can get your mother, your brother, your friends to vote on your patch. So the actual organization looks at it with a little bit more seriousness. Anyway, this is something I'd like to see on edX. A code review system that does better than GitHub. That's all. I was at OSCON in 2012, and I don't remember who said this, but we were talking about how Google does open source. And they said Google doesn't do open source, Google does tada source. What's tada source? Well, take Android, for instance. They don't, there's no real development community around it. They just, release the code once in a while. So new release, ta-da, here you go, here's the source. There's no, while you get access to the source, you don't get access to discussion of the architecture, discussion of the roadmap. Nothing is public about that in Google's Android. And the reason I bring this up, there's a very particular point here that has nothing to do with the patch I've been discussing. So Otto is edX's e-commerce system, right? You've probably heard of it. And we wanted to release our own platform, and we wanted a way to charge people for it, right? So Otto, yay, we heard of it in the mailing list, and wow, let's use that. But then, this was pre-Dogwood. We went looking around for documentation on what it was going to do, how it was going to work, are we going to be able to use it, and stuff like that. And there was very little, if not none, all right? And even less discussion of what it was going to do. So, Otto, but what is Otto? Where is it? Where is it going? And we were worried about one particular point, which is there's an European regulation that says anybody buying digital services, which in edX course has to pay a particular tax, or actually the organization has to pay a tax on that, wherever they are in the world. Okay? And if Otto didn't support this, we couldn't use it for European customers, which were going to be our biggest client base. So we were worried about Otto not doing that. But there was no documentation, there was no discussion. The ticket on the edX system was closed, it was private, so we couldn't even look at it. What we ended up having to do is develop our own shop instead of using Otto, where even if Otto wasn't perfect to begin with, if we had access to the discussion or to the planning of Otto, we could have maybe collaborated with edX and built something that worked in Europe, for instance, right? And then released it together with the rest. But that didn't work out. So what I'd like to see, and if you ask me, this is the most important point of this talk, I'd really like to see more openness in the discussion around the architecture and the roadmap, not just bug fixing and how it's being used and so on and so forth. Okay, so not tada source, open source, as in open discussion as well. Okay, so that's what I'd like to see. So I don't think I have I had many more slides in there. That's about it. If you guys have any questions, feel free to shoot. What?
Yeah, this was really fun because you really did share a day in the life of an organization.
Yeah, that was the thing. Wait a minute, please, the microphone, yeah, so people at home can see. My mother wants to listen.
She's proud, I'm sure. So of all the open source communities you're aware of and have been part of, how does OpenEdX compare? And tell us.
If there's a spectrum of goodness to badness, God, forgive me, edX would be sort of 75% on the way to being one of the best, because they were very, very welcoming in the end, and there are very few bad words in it. Okay? So I can get my future daughter to code in it safely, right? So yeah, they're very serious, they're very active, so it's a very healthy project. They are very open, but as I said, it's missing a few pieces, I would say, that have to do with the stuff I said, such as, for instance, open discussion. Okay, so to compare with OpenStack, OpenStack is also a very large project, maybe even larger, and everything is public, everything. if you go to conferences, there are sessions just for discussing the roadmap, for instance. And everything is online as well. There are very few, actually, I can't say that, I don't know. But supposedly, there are few discussions behind closed doors. So that's something I'd like to see edX do. Be public about their discussions and actually invite people to give their opinion on things, if at all possible. Okay? Any more questions? So I answered your question already. Ah, see? Any more? Please, always. Ned, announce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Ned.
Yay. Ned actually looks like my teacher I was telling you about.
I thought it is good for you, man. So thank you very much for this talk. It's really great to have sort of a first-person view of what's going on. And we've been back and forth on pull requests, and you've given us some good critical feedback, so I was glad to hear all the positive things you said here, because I actually thought you were going to be a little harder on us than that, but so it's good. We're
Thank you.
good. I think one of the things when we compare OpenStack and OpenEdX, OpenStack is a much more symmetric community than OpenEdX is, because it's fundamentally a collection of large cloud providers all trying to build a thing that they'll all use equally.
Yeah.
And the big challenge for edX as a corporation and OpenEdX as a project is that it has edX, the corporation, which simply outweighs in bulk the number of non-edX people, right?
Yes.
And that asymmetry is our big challenge.
That's true.
You were very insightful to notice that open source contribution label on the GitHub pull requests, and that's really there to make sure we pay extra attention to it, because it balances out the fact that all the other PRs that don't have those labels, those are all being worked on in an agile process by Scrum teams with product owners and daily stand-ups, and so there's a lot of attention on those pull requests due to all that other coordination that's happening in the office. And so that label is there so that we will be able to find those and make sure we're paying attention to them.
Yeah, so that answers our question, right?
That's the intent of it, at least. So, and I am very interested in hearing what would make this process better. The good news is that although we're down to 3 people now from the 5 we had a year ago, let's say, we have a new person coming on in July who'll be able to help with the pull request process. And we are looking to hire back that 5th person. So if anyone has any leads on someone who could work at edX helping this process, how's your job working for you right now? We are interested in talking to people who want to come and work at edX to do this.
So all the 5 viewers on YouTube, you'll help as well.
The conference room at edX is live streaming this talk, so there are people back at edX right now hearing what you're saying. So that's good.
11. Oh, so that's my mother, my coworkers, and I don't know. Yeah, maybe 3 people, whole different people. All right, awesome. Thanks, Ned.
Thank you.
That was awesome. So thank you, guys. If you have any questions later on, look me up. All right?
I'd love to hear from anyone else too.
Yeah, that's Ned.